Today and this morning here at Teodom, in partnership with Chapter Zero Slovenia, this panel explores how boards across the Adria region are responding to climate risks, not just as an environmental issue, but as a co-governance and strategic challenge. Please join me in welcoming our moderator for this session, and that will be Barbara Uranjek, CEO of the British Slovenian Chamber of Commerce, and our distinguished panelists, Aleksandar Đorđević, Business Development Manager at MK Group, Nina Kelemen, Head of Sustainable Development at Triglav Group, Miha Košak, Honorary Chairman of Chapter Zero Slovenia, Zoran Martinovski, President of the Prime Blue Institute, Maša Njegovan, Senior Expert and Corporate Sustainability Lead at Climate Lens Advisors, and Ivan Tomic, Director of Strategy and Business Development at NLB Group. While this conversation continues here, I will be heading now at Dom Vojske, so there will be no timer here for you, human timer.
Your beautiful voice, deep voice.
Please join me at the other venues then. But as usually people tend to... Oh, yes, Sasha?
Excellent.
Sasha is your human timer here, so just so you know, I'm worse, so you're in good hands now. Okay, that's what this summit is all about: ideas, momentum, and action across every venue that we have. If you want to choose where you want to go, you already know the gist. You choose within the app, you see at the website. Barbara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't know if this works. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this panel on Chapter Zero in Adria, making climate a boardroom priority. We will try to wake you up on this beautiful morning in Tivat in the next hour with some great speakers I have here. We will talk about how to bring climate into every boardroom. Yesterday, the previous Prime Minister of Iceland said that science is under siege. Indeed. Yet the climate crisis is no longer a distant threat, especially in our Adria region. We're feeling its impact in terms of heat waves, floods, and droughts, disrupting economies and industries. Yet, on the other hand, many businesses still struggle to put climate considerations into their core strategies. And this is precisely where Chapter Zero Slovenia comes in. Being part of an initiative that started at the Davos World Economic Forum a couple of years ago by the Climate Governance Initiative, it's now present in already 70 countries and brings knowledge and tools for non-executive board directors to integrate into their strategies. In Slovenia, this initiative has already gained a very strong recognition and is supported also by our president, Dr. Nataša Pirc-Musar. Now, our challenge is to bring it to the Adria region, and our wish. So, today, to begin today's discussion, I will first have questions for three speakers who bring a unique perspective on the role of climate governance. Miha Košak and Zoran Martinovski have first-hand experience in boardrooms as non-executive board directors. And Maša Njegovan is leading the establishment of Chapter Zero in Serbia. So, let's start. Miha Košak, the honorary chairman of Chapter Zero Slovenia.
It's funny how you make my surname English. Košak.
Košak.
Isn't that funny how it is?
You're right. So, Miha, we often hear that corporate climate is put away into the ESG and sustainability department. Yet the reality is that change must come from the top. And this is where Chapter Zero Slovenia comes in. Can you tell us the story as you brought it to Slovenia from the UK?
And thank you very much. Dobro jutro svima. Apologies that we all have to speak in English. My Serbo-Croatian has disappeared over the years as I get older, but I want to welcome you all. I want to thank my panel here, distinguished panel, for coming to Tivat, the sponsors as well, and obviously you for being here. I think my job is quite easy because if you're here, that means you're already convinced. so I don't have to preach to you. It's much more fun when we have skeptics in the room, and that's more of a challenge to sort of bring the story of why this is so important. Let me go back a little bit so that you know a little bit about my background. I started the non-executive director path in one-tier and two-tier boards back in 2013 when I was asked to join the supervisory board of Nova Ljubljanska Banka. And let me say that in 2013, I was still grappling on the board with governance overall, not just climate. In fact, climate didn't even come up in any of the discussions. For those of you that are familiar with what was going on in Slovenia in 2013, there was a lot of pressure on the banking system. The Troika was sort of rumored to be coming in. So we had totally different scenario to deal with, a little bit like today. In today's environment where we don't know whether tariffs are up or tariffs are down or what the hell is going on in the world, we get a little bit distracted on the board. But my first worry in 2013 was actually how corporate governance is run in two-tier boards. It wasn't up to the level that you would expect it to be in Slovenia, and particularly for a bank that at that time was a state-owned bank. So there was a lot of work to do just on that side. But as the years sort of progressed, and I have to say also from pressure from my children, my two sons, how much, Dad, are you discussing climate in the boardroom? And I sheepishly had to say, no, we have other things. We need to worry about profitability. We need to worry about keeping our employees on, et cetera, et cetera. Then in 2019, I joined Chapter Zero UK. That was the first Chapter Zero that was established. And from then, we've established 33 chapters around the world. And it all stemmed from a paper that was published from the World Economic Forum, which was about having climate risk discussed in the boardroom. So I have to say, a lot of that starts from Geneva, reaching out to, let's say, some like-minded non-executive directors in the UK. And from that, this whole thing has exploded because we now have globally over 110,000 members, most of them non-executive directors or directors. Then you all remember what happened in 2020. Suddenly, we were all locked up in home. And I started thinking, why can't we establish this in former Yugoslavia and Adria? I wanted to think of it more as an Adria thing than just a Slovenia thing, but I didn't really know how to go about it. I couldn't visit anybody, I couldn't do anything. So I turned to my good friend over here, who can do a lot of things, and she is the co-founder with me. We had already been working at the Chamber of Commerce, the British Slovenian Chamber of Commerce, and we said together, this is a great idea, let's do it, because climate is not being discussed, at least in the Slovenian context, on the board. How do we entrench this into the board? And very briefly, it meant we had to find other like-minded people. And the way we went about it is, there is something in Slovenia called Združenje nadzornikov, so the Slovene Directors Association, and we also reached out to one of the big four firms, in this case Deloitte, who was very much at the forefront of this, as with the other three accountancy firms. And together, over 2 years, so it took a long time, exactly 2 years ago, 2023, next Friday, we established Chapter Zero Slovenia. And we were also very fortunate that we had a new president in Slovenia, as was mentioned, Dr. Nataša Pirc-Musar, who also believed as part of her presidency that one of her mandates will be discussion on climate. So that's how that element started.
And let me ask, you've done extensive work in the financial industry, investment banking, capital markets. You also know the region well. You traveled to Serbia and other countries here extensively in your previous jobs. What can you, how can you compare Slovenia and the region in terms of governance? What needs to be done here to take, in order for us to take the next step in bringing climate into the boardroom? What can be learned from the last 2 years of Chapter Zero in Slovenia in the region?
Well, I'm lucky to have colleagues from NLB and Triglav here who are very much pan-Adria players in the region. And I'm sure they will also tell you that obviously we're operating at different speeds. Slovenia and Croatia being part of the EU means that they are subject to EU regulations, and therefore, good or bad, that means they're ahead of the game. When I look at the rest of the region, for those that are still attempting to come into the EU, Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, then you can say to yourselves, they are on the path, but the question is really how further on that path are they? It really depends what size institution you are. Are you just a domestic player, or do you belong to a bigger group? Tends to be, if you belong to a bigger group in Serbia, you already have some good governance. That's not to say if you're a Serbian-only play or a Montenegro-only play that your governance isn't good, but it really depends where you are on that path. You're not at the same level as Slovenia and Croatia, that is obvious, but you are getting there. So the problem is that we're not operating at the same speed. Some are well ahead, some are not well ahead. And I think the first thing that we really need to sort out in those companies, in those countries, is first of all the governance function. The problem is, the climate situation is not getting any better. We've already, let's be honest, we're already down a path that is so further down than we expected, that we have to do both at the same time.
And talking about governance in the region, Zoran, we spoke yesterday about bringing climate into the boardroom, and you said that there are so many other steps needed before that, regulation, certification, and so on. How do you see that changing? And what's the situation now in Northern Macedonia?
Let me also give a short of background like Miha did. I was in development finance business for more than 20 years. I joined IFC 25 years ago. And I recall those days when IFC, and I have colleagues here sitting in the room that were actually working on corporate governance issues. Whenever we would be talking financial arrangements with financial institutions, companies, environmental, social, and corporate governance considerations were on the top of the agenda. But back then, there was no regulation on that. There was a very limited regulation, very confusing one. And there was a hesitation on the side of the clients really to adhere to these requirements that IFC actually would impose on them. I remember negotiating with Triglav and NLB, and this is 15, 20 years ago, right? So it was a slow process for the companies really to understand that these considerations are not only because, I don't know, an international financial institution is insisting on, but there is a good business case for that. So basically the concept of anticipating long-term risks, which derive from social and environmental and governance, I would say, parts, are crucial for the resilience of the business. And this is what basically was part of my, I would say, professional focus over the past years, and let alone, apart from climate change, issues, there are all sorts of other governance issues. Succession plannings and transparency and so on. So, but over the years, climate change specific risks, they have went through the roof. In Macedonia, you asked me about Macedonia. Year after year, we are witnessing extreme weather events. We have floods, we have prolonged droughts, we have wildfires. People are being, impacted. People losing lives. In Skopje, we had flooding about 7 years ago, I think. More than 20 people died at the, roundabout of Skopje. Just imagine, the magnitude of this event. So, I would say the leadership of the country understood the necessity to do something about it. Macedonia is making progress towards EU in terms of GDP convergence, but at a huge environmental and health costs. My hometown, Skopje, is among the most polluted cities in the world, year after year. We all live there. We share the implications of this climate change-related hazards, right? So, when preparing for this panel, I read a few reports, one of which was prepared by the World Bank, and it's shocking. Only to address impact of climate change, basically, massive investments are needed. Like in the next 10 years, the country needs to invest more than 50 billion in order to fulfill its international commitments, right? Towards Paris Agreement and so. To meet the 2050 targets, the country needs to invest more than $30 billion. I mean, it's a huge... This is Macedonia only. So if you think about it, so this climate change, I would say, fulfillment is a massive investment program that has several, I would say, components, one of which is investment, massive investment in education is needed. I mean, we need to change our workforce. I mean, we need to reskill this army of people and sort of bring them up to speed, because companies would need, you know, the skill sets which are needed for the green transformation. So huge, comprehensive transformation of education and training system is needed. Our education system is not producing, you know, simply, you know, the cadre for the new era. And I have here a colleague from Stax, actually. In Stax, which is a Serbian company, one of the good examples how they built internal academy. So they're producing their, you know, the skill sets they need for their specific needs, because the system is not producing them. So again, number one, investments in education. Number two, huge investments are needed in infrastructure and energy. And the third pillar is investments in sustainable businesses. So what are the, I would say, if I can name the key obstacles, number one is to fix a regulatory environment. It's not complete. Our Minister of Energy yesterday, Sanja, she spoke about the need to adopt the new law on renewables. In Macedonia, we don't have let's say, a proper PPP law that would allow, you know, bigger private sector participation in these large-scale infrastructure projects. Without that, there are huge risks involved. So that's why you don't have, I would say, reasonable investors in the scale needed to actually fulfill this, I would say.
But what exactly needs to be done in terms of regulation and governance? We're talking about boards. We need climate to come into the boardroom. How do we achieve that in Northern Macedonia?
Okay, first of all, I think, I mean, you can do so much with regulation. I mean, if you impose, I would say, rigidity for the sake of, you know, rigidity, it wouldn't work. But if you say, if you do the following, if you say, okay, if you incentivize financial sector to mobilize financial instruments which are sustainability linked, for instance, you know, green bonds, green loans, where, you know, loan terms would be linked to fulfillment of sustainability targets, this would incentivize companies to bring on board skilled, I would say, educated people which have the profile to push.
So green finance, green bonds.
Green finance is one thing. And then,
Can I just add something?
Please.
If I can, Zoran. I think one of the key things that helped Slovenia, or at least in my eyes, was that the financial sector was required through European Union legislation to start thinking about this, and that there was this regulatory pressure. Now, yesterday, a lot of speakers said there was too much regulation. If we go through CSRD, we go to CS3D, we go absolutely. But you had to start somewhere. And I think what there was a bit of a carrot and stick approach. Because the carrot is the fact that we all know we should be doing this. It actually helps our businesses. And a lot of people that buy our products, if they see that we are actually a little bit greener, it's actually an advantage, right? The other side is the stick, which is what, in the financial sector case, and I was at a bank when the single supervisory mechanism started in 2014, that you're a systemic Eurozone bank. That helped because we'd had pressure not just from Brussels, but also from Frankfurt. And that stick helped us to sort of start thinking like that, right? So when you look at how the board is structured, the board knows if I don't fulfill these regulatory requirements, I'm going to get fined. That's going to be a disaster for my business. My shareholders will get rid of us all, etc. So you needed that stick. And I think the region actually still needs that stick a little bit to get things going. The other side is finding like-minded people on the board. When I started, and we didn't talk about climate in any of these places, and I was at Gorenja, I'm still at Elan, I'm still at Ljubljana Airport, etc., on the boards there. At the beginning, you have to find a like-minded person. So, I don't know, if Zoran was there and we started talking on the board, we're both non-executive directors, and I hear that he has a passion for this as well, then you find a like-minded person, you start bringing that into the boardroom, etc. But I also then speak to my colleagues down here. I'd speak to Nina, I would speak to Ivan, who are B-1, and I would go and see the head of compliance, I would see the head of sustainability, and I'd say, are you getting traction on the supervisory board? Have you actually met somebody from the supervisory board? Because that's the problem as well, right?
Going back to your...
Sorry, apologies.
Yeah,
please.
going back to what you said, too much regulation. Let's move now to Serbia. Masha, you are now completely different environment to the EU. ESG regulation, trying to set up Chapter 0 in Serbia. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yeah, so we have a little bit of a different situation in Serbia because we don't have any regulation, literally no ESG regulation apart from the basic non-financial reporting requirements that have very vague KPIs. But perhaps maybe just to share a little bit about my motivation to start Chapter 0 in Serbia in the first place. So I think it was pretty much personally driven, based on the experiences I had through my career. First of all, I had an experience working as a climate policy advisor at the Serbian Ministry of Environmental Protection, and there we were reporting towards the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and here is where we firsthand experienced through the report writing, consolidating the data, what were the damages of climate change, the physical damages of floods, of all the weather-related changes that were induced by the long changes in climate patterns. And those costs, they were estimated in billions of euros. So, and the situation that we forecast through the scientific analysis and advisory that we got from the climatologists from Serbia was that the situation was only getting worse, and the sectors like agriculture, like the energy and infrastructure, they would be adversely affected. So it's not something abstract, it's very quantifiable, the negative damage that would be incurred by those sectors. So that's the physical risk component. And then on the other hand, I had an opportunity to work with, I would say, probably over 100 companies in Serbia through different kinds of programs in my capacity as the leader of sustainability advisory at Deloitte. So we have delivered a number of trainings, a number of advisory, capacity building, and so on to these companies, ranging from small and medium enterprises to large corporates, including private sector and financial institutions. And what we encountered was that more and more of those were actually facing the external regulatory pressure, as you know, so from the EU primarily, and there was a pressure that they didn't know how to deal with, right? So it was mostly still at that phase, it was a compliance issue, so they were thinking about how to get a couple of data points to compile some kind of a report, to perhaps calculate their GHG emissions so they can submit it to the CBAM registry and so on. But the thing is that it was really very much a basic and an isolated way within the company that these companies were dealing with the topic. So it was normally either a legal, a compliance department, in some cases the newly formed ESG department, but this kind of action was not integrated into the wider company strategy. And that was becoming very obvious that these kind of standalone initiatives, even though they were normally driven by very enthusiastic individuals within those companies who wanted to learn and grow in these areas, they weren't sustainable. And without the message from the top and the support from the top, from the board and the executive management in particular, these kind of isolated actions didn't have a real effect on the company's business model. So from my side, it was really at some point, I learned from the colleagues at Deloitte, because as we learned, Deloitte was one of the partners of Chapter 0 in Slovenia. I learned about Chapter 0, and this immediately became some concept that I thought was the perfect solution to the situation that we had in Serbia, which was the lack of capacities at board level. And what I really like about Chapter 0 is that it really offers a zero-cost knowledge. So it is a form of, let's say, a non-for-profit kind of work where you have the world-leading experts gathering under the same umbrella, delivering and sharing their knowledge and experience, also gathering companies that are very experienced in working firsthand with these kind of climate risks and opportunities in their companies, so exchange of knowledge, of best practices. And I was very lucky that I encountered some, I would say enthusiasts from Sustineri partners, from Climate Lens advisors, from other expert consulting companies, and we're now on the path really to gather the world-leading experts, companies from both the financial institution side and the private sector, so that we can initiate this work on really bringing climate to the boardroom agenda. And maybe just one call to action here is that we're now fundraising, because as I said, this will be a non-for-profit kind of initiative. We're looking for companies that would support this initiative. So if you recognize yourselves, if you think that this is part of your mission as a company, or you want to learn more, to engage more in these topics with your peers, then please reach out to me.
Congratulations, Masha, on this initiative. And yesterday you said climate governance seems abstract in the region. What do you think needs to be done in Serbia for governance to develop into a good enough base for climate to enter the boardroom?
Well, I think the first thing is the knowledge needs to be built up within the boardrooms. And it's not an easy challenge, because climate change, as some of you who are dealing with these topics know, it's a very complex topic. So it requires some basic scientific knowledge, the knowledge of the climate change concepts, how they translate to the physical and transition risks. How do you measure some more technical issues? How do you measure GHG emissions? How do you conduct climate materiality assessment? These are all things that require new tools, new knowledge. And this is something that many companies still lack. And at the board level, what the regulation is really requiring is, it's very clear. It's for the boards to oversee climate risks and opportunities. This is what the EU CSRD regulation is requiring. This is what the TCFD previously for the financial sector required. And now the IFRS S2, which is becoming really the global standard for climate risk and opportunity management. So it is very clear that boards need to take responsibility for these topics, yet if they don't have knowledge, how can they oversee these topics, right? So the first really challenge is to build these basic capacities within the boardrooms. For the financial services sector, I would say that this is very much advanced because of the fit and proper requirements of the ECB, and most of the banks operating in Serbia, they are EU headquartered. So we have delivered a number of trainings to the financial institution boards. However, private sector is really lagging behind that, especially the SMEs, but even the corporates. And we can see, I would say, many board members of the large corporates, multinational corporates, lately were reaching out to us, saying that they were getting some requests from their mother companies that were either based in the US or the EU, and they didn't know how to deal with these climate KPIs that were imposed on them all of a sudden. So they were very keen. So the motivation is there. We now just need to use this momentum and to start working and engaging those.
You mentioned the private sector. If I go back to Zoran, you sit on the supervisory board of the biggest winery in Northern Macedonia, Tikves. Miha just before said you should find like-minded people on boards. How does it work? What are your experiences?
My colleagues from Tikves are in the room, and the founder, Mr. Janevski. I joined the board of...
So you're going to have to be careful what you
of
say.
course.
That's why you said that.
Of course. I joined the board back in 2021, and frankly speaking, even back then, the company was already doing a lot in terms of CSR, in terms of investing in I would say, sustainable practices, and that was already in place. However, there was what was missing was I would say proper ESG framework, what was my initial thought, which I shared back then with the leadership of TICVAS, was the need to really promote the ESG concept in an agribusiness operation. TICVAS is among the largest agri-food producers in the country, but also in the region. And so ESG was not, was needed to address, I would say, a multiple set of issues around the environment, around social, because TICVAS deals with a number of grape growers, farmers, distributors, and so on. And it had, I would say, to some extent, a complex governance structure with a number of small shareholders and so on. So that was the first, I would say, thing which we did in the board, really to communicate this need. So make the emphasis, put the emphasis on the long-term, I would say, benefits for the company to have such a framework. Then climate change-related topics were part of the were put in as a central agenda at the board. Before that was not really a topic of discussion to that extent. So not everybody in the board, I would say, immediately understood, what it is. Because of, probably lack of understanding. Frankly speaking, a couple of years ago, ESG was a not very, I would say, familiar concept for many businesses, and still it is. So that was one thing. But then I would say the strong point was, so we triggered this, I would say, process. But then what came from the leadership, from the very top, was commitment towards environmental protection, commitments towards combating climate change because it's directly impacting the business. We have issues with droughts, and we have, the quantity of grapes being produced, which is the essential ingredient in the wine business, right? So basically, we need to do something about it, and to do something about the people. So a strong commitment to promoting opportunities for the youth, for all these, I would say, young people, basically, which are part of the ecosystem of the company. So this is what happened. Plus, again, the company bring on board expertise that was very much needed. Promoted organic certification of vineyards. Promoted AI-driven tools and other technologies to address, to reduce environmental impact. It's farming. It's agribusiness. And of course, I have to say, a critically important, I would say, development was partnership with a prominent IFI, such as EBRD, that supported this initiative, supported the production of the first ESG report. And, I'm proud to be part of a system. TICVAS is the only winery in Southeast Europe that has ESG report. TICVAS is the only winery, and that is part of an international alliance of wineries. I think it's called International Wineries for Climate Action, I think. IWCA, right. So, again, this is not only a marketing tool. Through these, I would say, activities, the company shares its commitments towards climate change. So basically, they're putting their, what the bankers say, they're putting their money where mouth is. So again, and today, ESG is, and to that extent, climate change is the main driver of the company.
So climate is definitely in the boardroom of TICVAS. Congratulations and well done for that. Let's now move to businesses. So we have 3 companies with us that are present all over the region in very regulated EU markets and not so regulated markets. Let's first hear from Ivan Tomic from NLB. So NLB has been recognized as a top ESG performer by Morningstar Sustainalytics, ranking among the highest ranked banks in Europe and worldwide. How do you see your banking role in this region in terms of climate action?
So first of all, congratulations for expanding Chapter 0 Slovenia to Adria. If there was a Tinder for sustainability, this would be perfect match for Alexandra and Biljana. You have the same mission. I know you have a lot of matches, but this one is like almost 100%. And we're very happy to support both as you're promoting sustainability around. Our main role as a commercial bank, like any other commercial bank, is to promote growth. And where do we want to promote growth? Obviously, climate change is one of the areas where we would like to, who mentions carrot and the stick? We see it more as a carrot than a stick, because it's quite boring to limit and to pay people, you have to stop this, yeah, sure. But where the growth is, and the growth is in the advanced technologies, you know, whether it's decarbonization, whether it's lower usage of energy, we would like to improve life, and that's one of the core values. So I'll be very short because I see that we are out of time and we have still colleagues on the panel.
Great, thank you, Ivan. So let's move to Nina. Nina, Triglav Group is the leading traditional insurance company in Slovenia and also largest insurance group in the Adria region, which positions you uniquely driving climate across the region. What impact do you see having it on accelerating sustainable development in the broader Adria region?
Insurance and the reinsurance companies in Europe play a very important role in promoting sustainable development because they pay out over 1,000 billions of claims yearly and manage over 10 trillions of assets in European capital markets. They also act in three major areas. So we are in the business of managing risk, investing, and underwriting. We have set clear ESG KPIs end of 2021. So I think it was a very good step early on that we want to move beyond mere compliance and to make sustainable development ambitions and climate commitments part of our core strategy. If I'm talking about now on focusing on asset management side, so asset management in insurance company consists of our own insurance portfolio, which is mainly invested in conservative fixed income investments. Then we have mutual funds, pension funds, and discretionary asset management. The KPIs that are linked to asset management side were set to increase the share of ESG bonds and to expand on offerings of mutual funds to include more funds that have sustainability characteristics. This was partly initiated by the SFDR regulation, which has clearly defined what sustainable investment or mutual funds with investment characteristics are. Otherwise, you have people that will label every product sustainable. And I still have some discussions with some in the insurance side that think that everything that's on the market is sustainable, but that I think it's not the case. So that was the driver of change in the mutual funds business. And if you're looking now at the actual numbers from 2021 to 2024, we have increased the share of ESG bonds in our portfolio from 10 to 13%. And in mutual funds business, there was a major shift in product offerings. So now all mutual funds that are managed by our subsidiary, Triglav Funds, Triglav Skladi, which is one of the major asset managers in Slovenian markets, has sustainable characteristics. So I think with this focus on promoting and investing and supporting green transition with investment in sustainable financial instruments, we help set market trends across the region.
Thank you, Nina. And last but not least, Alexander from MK Group. So MK Group has been a pioneer in renewable energy in the Balkans as the first to open a wind farm in Serbia, one of the most important producers of renewable energy in the Adria region. So a Serbian company operating both in EU and non-EU markets. What lessons can other businesses in this region learn from the MK Group?
Yeah, so basically you're completely right. We have started as pioneer in renewable energies, and currently we have like 200 megawatts installed in wind farms with the future plans to go to 1 gigawatt from the renewable sources. That will bring some additional 900 million euros of investments over the next couple of years. So basically, we recognize the issue and we tried to do something about it. So basically, we entered this renewable energies segment as a company who is well aware of the climate risks. Basically, as you know, we are into tourism, agriculture, and energy. So basically, we were hit from 3 sides with the climate changes. Agriculture was one of the main pillars of the MK Group, and we had lots of issues with changeability of the weather, different crop structures, different possibilities to approach the market in these conditions. So basically, the idea of going into renewables and this ESG came from that. We get to know firsthand what is devastating effects of the climate changes. So basically, we were financially strong, but we recognized that there is some kind of an issue, and we wanted to be a part of a solution. Therefore, what we have done first, we partnered with the people who had knowledge. Masha mentioned the importance of knowledge. We didn't have knowledge about renewable energies at that time, but we were willing to partner with the companies which had. So basically, for the first 3 windmills, we had the partners from Fintel Energy from Italy, and for the 4th one, which is the biggest one in Serbia currently, we partnered with Alfi Renewables from Slovenia. So basically, we partnered in order to get the knowledge. Now we are learning. We learned a lot from our partners. So basically, we are now able to continue with the further investments completely on our own if needed. But still, we would like to have partners from the EU in order to be able to have a jump start, because the Serbia does not have all of the regulations. And going forward, EU accession, at some point of time, we will have them. We were discussing about the governance laws and everything. We were going to have them. So basically, it's much better to recognize the trends, and it is much better to invest into a future and to share this knowledge and to be prepared. Because we started like any other company in Serbia. We saw that this might be costly, that this might influence our profitability, and we started from there. Later on, we fully understood that this is an opportunity. Yes, it might cost at the start, but if you invest into it, at the end, you're going to be more better positioned on the market if you are already there where the other companies needs to be in a couple of years.
And since you're present in, like I mentioned, EU markets and non-EU markets, how do you ensure this consistency in terms of climate governance?
Basically,
and also all 3 sectors?
Yeah, basically, as you said, we are operating on Slovenia market. On Croatia market, we have the hotels and real estate developments, and we are present in Montenegro, Serbia. So basically, what we are trying to do is actually to see what are the highest standards and then implement them on the whole group. Nevertheless, there is no stick, but we see a carrot in there. So basically, what we are trying to do is actually be prepared and being a bit ahead of a market, because we do believe that can provide us with competitive advantage tomorrow.
So going from higher standards down.
Yes.
And maybe the same question also for Trigo and NLB. You also operate in the whole region. How do you keep up this consistency in terms of climate governance?
So I think the climate governance point is very, very important. So you need a strong and ongoing commitment from the leadership levels to ensure that the strategy is implemented in your core operations. So we have several mechanisms in place to make sure that this stays that way. First, for several years now, we have Sustainable and Compliance Committee, which is responsible for coordinating, informing, monitoring activities within the group. And this feeds into boardroom discussions. Then we have ESG department, which is not solely separated from the company, but it's in a central role. So he has a direct reporting line to the board member who is responsible for ESG activities. I think however a company organizes, it's not one solution that fits every company, but every company needs to figure it out by themselves what is correct for them. So, but I think common for all the good practices in climate and sustainable governance is that you have a direct reporting line and connections to the board and the supervisory board. Then we have the network of ESG coordinators. So these are positions within the business functions as well as within all the subsidiaries across the Adria region. They are reporting to ESG department on a quarterly basis. So this is to make sure that every strategically important activities or financially important activities are aligned with the group strategy. So I think it makes a lot of sense that such structured approach is making sure that climate considerations and sustainability considerations are part of day-to-day business as well as part of the planning processes.
And NLB?
For us, it's fairly similar, though we don't recognize borders when it comes to sustainability. So we have a common program developed when we started in 2020. So basically it's sustainability. So there is a board member at a supervisory board level that is in charge of sustainability. Then Group CEO is basically also Chief Sustainability Officer. Then we have a Sustainability Committee that is the largest committee of the group. So each CEO of our entity is a member of that committee, and also we have in each country ESG coordinators. Bogdan is here, so whatever is happening in Montenegro on sustainability, Bogdan is the man to go. So that's basically how the information flows. But then we have put our sustainability program online. So for us, it's a core value. What does that mean? Full transparent, open source initiative. So in 4 years, whoever copies our program, I'm not saying Tikvish has to do something similar, but any company, and in 4 years you can get an award as a top-rated company from Europe or a top-rated bank in the world. It's not easy, it's expensive, it requires a lot of effort, a lot of people, but it's doable, even from this region.
Mika, any parallels to your roles in supervisory boards?
I thought this was brilliant, and I'm really grateful to all of you for everything you said. I think the progress that's been made, if I just picture from when I left NLB in 2016 to today, for example, is very impressive. Because the discussion is what goes on at board level, I wanted to just add, a lot will also depend on who's chairing the supervisory board. So for all of you that are starting on that path, that chairperson is going to be the key, because they will also dictate a little bit about the way the flow goes. The other thing that I was very happy to hear here is that both Alexander, Nina, and Ivan mentioned that I suspect you report to the supervisory board now. You are invited to the supervisory board because...
Since there's a mandatory reporting, that happened as well. So it's a bit push from the regulatory framework as well.
So again, 12 years ago, when I was sitting in NLB, I kept asking, why am I not getting B-1 that actually does all the work reporting to the supervisory board? I'll be rude now. I'm getting sick and tired of hearing from you management board members, because I actually appreciate you don't really know what you're talking about. I'd like to hear it from the expert, and I'd like you to get educated. And I'll be the first one, and I'll use that. You can tell by my accent, I live in the UK. I use that Anglo-Saxon approach to say, I'm the stupidest in the room, so can you please educate me? Because I'm not afraid to ask questions. And I found in our region, we don't ask questions on the supervisory board. We used to listen to the chair, the CEO, and that was it. And then we signed a few things. And sometimes I feel that some of that still goes on in our region.
So let me interrupt you over here. It's quite the contrary right now. We have forward-looking board that come to us and say, what shall we do? So basically I'm involved. I mean, not great for some, let's say, C-suite over here. I'm involved in setting targets for the organization.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean...
And I'm rating them.
Fantastic.
Not great, though.
But all these kind of discussions also helped you when you think about, Zoran, you mentioned succession planning, yeah? I used to always like to see inside. If I sit on the supervisory board, I usually don't know what happens at B-1, B-2 levels, unless unless they come to the border, unless I inform myself. And that's also developed because I would rather promote up to board level people inside first and then look for the outside. So I think changes have been tremendous. I'm getting the sense that we still have a long way to go. I was pleased what Ivan mentioned also. He said there are no borders in climate. And that's the problem, that we sometimes still think that the borders and walls will halt this. It won't. We need to look at this from a global approach. But I feel, you know, if I just look at this path of 12 years that I've seen this, I think the change has been tremendous. But we can't lift our foot off the accelerator at all.
And now it's time to go into the Adria region. Any questions from the audience? Oh yeah, one question.
It's not a question, that's a comment, because Ivan talked about, I'm here, but I'm originally from Ljubljana, and it's my, let's say, advice, don't go just zero chapter in the boardroom. Also, you should go in kindergarten, because in Slovenia, early 70s, we're talking about sustainability, about ESG. We're collecting in the schools old papers, bottles, and that was competition between schools, which was the best.
Definitely education.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us that were born in Yugoslavia, I think we were quite sustainable, either due to economic reasons, so collecting bottles and getting a discount when you bought your Radenska afterwards was the way it was built in. I think also the fact, if I go back to agriculture, that you know, through the winery that Zoran's involved, all of us made our own wine as well. Well, I don't know if it was wine, it was more vinegar, but wine. But what I wanted to say was we all have vegetable patches, so we were sustainable also in the old days. So I think if this is a region that should be able to do it, you know, if we can't win, I don't know who can. So
Yeah.
in that respect.
Let's have a final round of maybe and maybe Alexander and Masha. You know, what's the next step in Serbia when it comes to climate governance? What is needed in order for climate to come into the boardroom? What do you think? Masha first? Ladies first?
Ladies first, okay. Well, I think what Alexander actually mentioned is it should be recognized as an opportunity. And even at the climate policy side, we are now moving away from this push of carbon pricing and requirements of compliance to opportunity side of green technology deployment. And in Serbia, there is a great potential for that. The EU is investing 100 billion euros into this through the green industrial policy. I think now, actually, we have a good news to share. Just earlier this week, we presented results of a comprehensive mapping of the green technology manufacturing opportunities in Serbia, and we identified 151 solution manufacturers, which is, I think, amazing. You know, so I think there is an opportunity for any side of business, for startups, obviously, to innovate, for SMEs to adopt those technologies, for financial sector to really sponsor, to invest in these kind of initiatives, for large corporates to perhaps think about opening new subsidiaries, new investment branches to diversify their businesses into the green, green business models, green sectors. I think the data from the IEA shows some encouraging facts that even this year and last year, the investment in renewable energy was twice the one in fossil fuels. So this shows that the momentum is going towards green. So if we don't capture this global green transition, we will stay locked into the, carbon intensive, very expensive kind of economy, which would sooner or later, in Serbia, we plan to impose carbon taxes by 2030. So sooner or later, our economy will become completely uncompetitive and unsustainable, literally, financially unsustainable. So I think we need to start looking at the opportunities and need to start thinking how to reinvent the businesses so that they are ready for the future.
Thank you, Alexander.
Yes, on my side, I can just only add to what Masha has said, that basically you can always wait for the government to do something. And that's one of the ways we've done in the past. Just sit and wait, the government will tell us, they will impose sticks, they will give us grants, we will get incentives, otherwise we will not do anything. But I do believe that those times has passed. The whole world is going into one direction. Okay, there will be hiccups, there will be Trump era, there will be new omnibus. There will be some things which will go up and down, but we are going to one direction, and basically our competitiveness will depend on how we are doing things. And having this ESG in mind is actually what will bring us there. If we do not start now, these postponements, they are fine if you see them as more time to practice and adapt. If you see them, we should start later, then you are in trouble. So basically what we can say is that I do believe that spreading the word and these initiatives like Zero Chapter should be one of the integrators of the bigger companies and promoting what needs to be done, because if we are waiting for the Serbian government to do everything and we will then just jump in, it's not going to happen. Zoran was mentioning, these investments are huge. These are billions and billions of euros which are needed to reach for the sum of the goals. We need to start as companies to do what we can do and to be prepared for the future which will come.
Thank you. And what about NLB and Triglav? You are top ESG performers in the region. What do you need here in the region in terms of legislation to be able to work better with your clients, with your customers?
I think for us now the biggest challenge is to move from managing sustainability and climate risk to seeing more opportunities. So not just the asset management side, but I think we are on a very good path, but also on the insurance product side. Why are we ahead in managing risk? Because we are in the business of managing risk, and because we have a European authority, EIOPA, who is very strict on making sure insurance companies are ready for what's happening in terms of climate transition and physical risks. So in terms of opportunities, we have outlined these in our group Sustainable Development Policy, which is publicly available since 2023. And these opportunities in insurance part of the business are mainly linked to further develop products that ensure climate-related risk like climate-related perils like drought and flood. Flood is very important for the Adria region, major risk, and also promote preventive solutions for clients, so to be prepared for what's coming in the years to come. And then on the mitigation side, to promote insurance products in sustainable mobility and renewable energy. So I think it's up to the board and the leadership that has a clear sense that we are part of that we are very much interconnected with the environment we operate in, and that we need to adapt our business model and strategy not just to geopolitical and regulatory shifts, but also to the transition to low carbon, sustainable and just future.
Thank you. I think we're running out of time, so be very fast.
Yes, very hard. We are from this region and we are for this region. Climate is a wide global issue. So what we're looking is what are the controllable factors that we can do. So we are clear on our products. It's fairly standard banking. But what would really help? I mean, look, I'm Belgrade born and raised, and I'm avoiding my hometown in winter. Why? Because we have a terrible pollution. It's a level of New Delhi. Skopje, yes, in a valley, not much different. So governments, they have a role. So there is a science. They can clearly see why that happens only in winter, but not in summer. So they have a big role to play, and it wouldn't hurt that ministers of energy and other ministries do sit together and make a credible plan. First of all, put the main reason out, say it publicly, and put a credible plan how to, let's start reducing it for the beginning.
I want to thank all the panelists for this great discussion. I think they deserve a round of applause. And I would like to invite you all to join Chapter Zero Slovenia. It's free of charge. And you have a lot of information there where you can get knowledge and the tools if you are a board member or if you want to become one. And Mika wants to say a few words at the end.
I would just like to thank also the panel. I'd like to thank you all. I'd like to thank you, Barbara, for leading this. And I'd also like to thank Tara Pleško that's sitting here in the front row, because without her, none of this would work anyway. And she works tirelessly. So thank you, Tara, to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.